It's a great day at HUD, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Tammy L. Wright, and I am the Equal Employment Opportunity Division Manager for the Office of Departmental Equal Employment Opportunity here at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Today, we are very pleased to be joined by Mrs. Denise McKinney, who is one of the commissioners of the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service, also known as FMCS. Mrs. McKinney, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And if you don't mind, I'll just get right into the conversation.
Sure.
So let's talk about mediation. What is mediation?
Mediation to me, I'm sure that there are very scholarly definitions of the word, but mediation to me is an opportunity to sit down and have a conversation about what ails you or what is before you in terms of conflict. I think of mediation as an opportunity.
I agree. I do agree with that. With that thought in mind, what would you like people to know about the benefits of mediation?
Mediation is quicker. Mediation is less costly. It is an opportunity to make resolution where there's conflict in the workplace. And when there's less conflict in the workplace and its people are more productive.
Now, I do agree with that also. And with that thought in mind, could you possibly tell us some of the key elements to a successful mediation?
I would say one would be the willingness to settle.
Okay.
And I always say that people who really want to settle do.
Okay.
That plus a commitment that management is embracing the process of mediation. The complainant is fully understanding of what takes place and what a mediator can and cannot do, and that the parties will have in their minds a plan A and a plan B,
Right.
and sometimes a plan C.
Yes, yes. It's a perfect segue actually into my next question, which is, what can the parties do to be prepared for mediation?
I would say find out as much as you can about the process.
Okay.
Have in mind, for instance, mediators have different styles. Find out where your mediator is coming from, what style of mediation that they are used to, what will be used, the parameters of settlement, who will be at the table, and whether the people at the table, and they should, have settlement authority, or it should be at least a phone call away.
Okay. And with any session like this, you know, there are always different rules. So could you possibly kind of outline the rules for mediation?
In terms of rules, I'm going to start back with, I'll say logistics.
Okay.
And it's not a hard, fast rule, but you want to make sure that the room where the mediation will take place is conducive to mediation.
Yes.
Give you an example of that.
Okay.
One of the worst mediations that I ever mediated was in a place and the whole wall was a wall of windows.
Wow.
And this was in, I think, California. And so the people at the table were not as interested in me or the process as they were with people frolicking on the beach.
Wow.
And so it was a little bit more to keep them engaged, you know, because they wanted to be outside.
Right. It was distracting.
So that's
Right.
one thing. I think that people should be fully knowledgeable about at least a schematic of mediation.
Okay.
And that would be what happens in the process. Do we start at the table? And I like to start at the table. What a caucus is, neutrality, a mediator being neutral, what type of process you're engaged in. For instance, is it a facilitated dialogue
Gotcha.
rather than a mediation? And they should have time put away
Right.
for the process. So those are some rules, and to have some what I call rules of engagement, how we will treat each other during the process.
Yes, that's important. And you spoke to time, like how many days or hours are we're talking about?
Well, in a regular workplace or EEO mediation, I'm looking at least 4 to 6 hours.
Wow.
Now, in collective bargaining, we don't have any set time.
Okay.
So-
Okay. And there's a lot of flexibility because I would like to think in mediation you probably don't know how long it's going to go. So
No.
do they tend to, go for a day or
Well,
do they run over for another day?
and this is a stock mediator answer. It
Okay.
depends.
Okay.
Some agencies where I do mediations will have a hard, fast time.
Okay.
They'll say they've asked the parties to put away 4 hours.
Okay.
So I know from start to finish that people have 4 hours.
Okay.
Anything less than 4 hours, I don't know if that's realistic. But the thing is, we may finish sooner than 4 hours.
Okay.
But if we get close to 4 hours and we're close to settlement, I don't want anybody to say, well, I've got to go now.
Right.
Because I've got something to do, another commitment.
Okay.
So I at least ask people for 4 hours. Typically, I would like to have all day,
Right.
because that way we can explore settlement options. People can have a nice, healthy lunch break.
Yes.
And a couple of breaks.
Now, how do you engage in mediation as a mediator? Are you more of, you just kind of let them kind of discuss it, talk it through, and if you feel that there's an impasse, you kind of help navigate through that, or how do you typically do it as a mediator?
There are different rules of mediation.
Okay.
Sometimes if you go to the internet, you'll see something, the 8-step mediation process,
Oh, wow.
the 5-step mediation process,
Okay.
the 102-step. I mean, there's some basic things that I like to do.
Okay.
And that is when I get into the room, I thank them for being there.
Right.
So that's something I always do. I like to start in what I would call full session.
Okay.
That means everybody that is privy to this meeting starts off at the same time.
Got you.
I'd also like to ask them during this full session how they would like to be addressed, whether you want to be Mr. or Mrs.,
Okay.
whether we want to go by first names. I'll take nicknames to a point,
Right.
but
Right.
not
Right.
really over the top nicknames.
Exactly.
I'd like to know while we're in full session, I want the complainant to talk about, in their own words, why they're there.
Okay.
And I want the responding people to hear
Gotcha.
why they're there. And I'd like to also ask them at that time what they see as a settlement. So that's where we start.
Okay.
And I like to keep people at the table as much as possible.
Okay.
Because it is very important that people communicate. Shuttle diplomacy is also an option. Caucusing is very important.
Okay.
However, in a mediation that's EEO or workplace or any type of interpersonal dispute where someone has been wronged, I think it's very important for people to actually see how the other person feels as they relive why they feel that they're there.
Right.
And that's hard to relay with shuttle diplomacy.
Okay. And you mentioned caucus. Could you explain what that entails or
Absolutely.
what's involved? Okay.
Caucusing involves meeting with one of the parties alone. Now, if a mediation is co-mediated, which we don't do a whole lot of, but if that means that there's an opportunity for the participants in mediation, usually the responding person and the complaining party, to talk off the record
Okay.
about some things, telling me what brought them to this point. Now, if there's anything shared in caucus that has to do with a threat of violence, something that's against the law,
Right.
I will tell them before they start talking.
Okay.
I'm going to have to tell that.
Wow.
If somebody says anything about overthrowing the government and or waste or abuse of government property,
Yes.
or anything like that, I am obliged to let somebody know that this is what they've said. Any type of, if somebody talked about they were going to go home and do something violent to somebody in their family, I won't wait until after they've said it and say, "Whoop, I know that I said that I wasn't going to tell, but I'm going to have to tell that."
Right.
So I let them know before they start talking, what I'm going to keep private.
Okay.
Now, if in that caucus they share something that they would like to see for settlement that they didn't mention in general session,
Okay.
I will always ask, is it okay if I share that with the other party? If they say no, then I know we have to work a little harder.
Exactly.
Or I will have to wait for a situation where they may reveal that.
Gotcha.
But if it's something I can share, with the other party that has to do with settlements, I do so with what we call mediator hypotheticals.
Oh, okay.
And that is, what if one party, let's just say Jane, what if Jane were willing to, I know she asked for the corner office, but what if Jane were willing to forego the corner office for the office that's right next door,
Right.
that has huge windows that are from floor to ceiling?
Exactly.
You know, is that something that you would entertain? And if the responding party says, yeah, I would be willing to do that, in my mind I know I've got a match.
Okay.
And I will ask, is it okay if I share that with Jane? Now, a lot of times I feel that it is a little bit more meaningful if the responding person that's making the offer does so across the table.
Gotcha.
Because they've got to forge a relationship or keep that relationship going. And so it'll look like this responding official is offering me this,
Gotcha.
rather than the mediator offering it.
Okay. That's a perfect segue into another thought that came about as you were speaking. How do you deal with angry participants? And of
Angry
course, that can be on either
participants.
side. It doesn't necessarily mean the
Absolutely.
complainant or grievant, but how do you deal with angry
Well,
participants?
people come to a situation of mediation and they are angry because their needs have not been met.
Right.
And sometimes that anger will play out in frustration.
Okay.
Or sometimes that anger is played out in what I call people being all balled up.
Yes.
And this is all
Yes.
balled up.
Yeah.
Arms crossed, legs crossed.
Definitely.
Everything balled up.
Yes,
So one of
that's a
the
shutdown.
challenges that I have is to try to get them to be
Yeah,
unballed
that's
at some
right,
point.
that's right.
And so non-verbally you look for clues to see if a person is more willing to speak. But when people are angry, and rightfully so, control venting is okay in mediation. And by what I mean about control venting, they're okay. It's okay if you are very passionate about what you have to say.
Right.
That is control venting. But it is not okay if you insult the other person or use foul language or throw everything off the table
Exactly.
and turn over the chairs because
Wow.
you're angry.
Right, that's true.
So when people are angry in mediation, I may call a break, call time and talk to that person or say, do you need a minute? I understand
Right.
that you are upset
Right.
about why you're here or why you feel that you're here, but I want to do a good job with mediating your case, and I want the other party to hear you.
Gotcha.
And it's really hard to hear you when you're doing this.
Right.
I think that they will hear you a little bit better if you are a little bit more controlled in how you communicate.
Right. And in the mediation environment, do you feel that parties are listening as opposed to waiting for their turn to speak?
Sometimes yes and sometimes
okay,
no.
okay.
Now, I can tell that they've been listening if they meet when it's their opportunity to speak,
Okay.
if they ask questions that show that they did listen,
Okay.
or if they ask questions to get more information.
Okay.
But if it's their turn to speak and they haven't heard anything
Yes.
that the other person has said, it is very telling.
Okay.
So I encourage people to take notes.
Okay. Okay. And are they able to keep those notes? So what happens?
Well,
to
I
those?
encourage people, like what I'm going to do is at the end of the mediation,
Okay.
I'm going to destroy my notes.
Okay.
And if there is a shredder in the room, I shred them, and I encourage them to do so.
Okay.
Now, what they do with their notes when they leave me, I can't make them
Gotcha.
shred their notes in front of me.
Gotcha.
But shredding of the notes is encouraged.
Okay. What is your approach to caucusing during mediation? Have you ever had multiple caucusing sessions during mediation?
Well, not in EEO or workplace mediations.
Okay.
In collective bargaining mediation, sometimes you will caucus with the union, sometimes you'll caucus with management, and within a union setting, or if you caucus with the union, sometimes you want to just speak with the chief negotiator.
Right.
And you ask if that's okay.
Okay.
So that's the only form that I've had the type of mediation, multiple caucusing.
Okay, that's understandable. And what normally happens when there's no resolution or agreement between the parties?
Well, if it's in EEO mediation, if they're in the informal stage, then I thank them for the time today
Okay.
that they've spent. I thank them for their efforts. I let them know, I'm sorry that we were not able to settle here. And I'll say, since you are in the informal stage, and if you want to continue in this process, you need to speak with your EEO counselor
Okay.
to see how to move forward or to get issued your notice of right to file formal charges.
Okay.
So I let them know
So-
what's coming next.
That's good. That's always great to know. Next steps. And how do you explain what a mediator is not expected to do during mediation?
Well, and that's a good question. Because when I talk about why I'm there, what I can do, I'll say I can make suggestions. I can't make you do anything. One time this lady said, well, what can you do?
Oh, my
You can't
goodness.
do
Oh,
this,
my-
you can't do
Yes.
Well, as a federal mediator, I can call a meeting and I can dismiss a meeting.
Okay.
Other than that, I try to use hypotheticals. I try to problem solve. I try to give them the benefit of my knowledge in caucus, or I may say something like, this is what I've seen happen before.
Okay.
How about thinking about this? They're not obliged to take any of my suggestions. And I do let them know I'm going to give you 100% of what I have and what I know. I'm also going to give you the benefit of my experience. You're not obliged to take any suggestions, but I'm also going to tell you what's worked and what hasn't worked in the past with other groups.
Got you. So when a management official comes to mediation actually with nothing to offer, how do you manage that session?
Well, they have to come with something.
Okay.
And if they don't have anything, during private caucus, I'm going to brainstorm with them
Okay.
to talk about
Okay.
possibilities.
Okay.
And I would probably be very disappointed
Okay.
that they were not prepared.
Gotcha.
You know, because if you want to use mediation, you have to come with some ideas for settlement.
Okay.
So we brainstorm some hypotheticals, or are you willing to do this, or what if you're the complaining party did this?
Right.
Or if they sit in that room all balled up, no, I'm not giving them anything, then we have to have a serious conversation
Wow.
with whoever assigned this management official, or maybe we'll take a break and I'll call and say, you know, you've assigned someone who is not in a settlement mode. They cannot offer anything. Please advise.
Which actually kind of lends us up into my next question. How do you really navigate through mediation when you feel the parties do not come to the table in good faith?
One of the things that I try not to do, and I make it a rule, is to never be party to a fraud.
Okay.
If I have an inkling that something is awry, then in private caucus, I'm going to ask some very good questions.
Okay.
And I'm glad you asked that, because I have an example. Once there was a mediation, and this young woman, well, she was relatively young, but she had seniority, and she did want this particular office. She really wanted it. And the reason that she wanted this office was because she had seasonal affective disorder, and she needed the bright light. So, excuse me, where she was an inner office, and she had a doctor's note,
Okay.
and she actually had more seniority. But for some reason, the manager did not want her to have this office.
Okay.
On their floor, there were 4 corner offices.
Okay.
And he'd actually assigned one of the corner offices to someone who had less seniority.
Okay.
And so he just said he wasn't going to give it to her. And so in private caucus, suddenly he looked like he had an idea, or I'd say an epiphany. He said, okay, she wants a corner office? I'll give it to her. It's a deal. And something didn't set right with me, that there was something wrong with this offer. So I went and did some research during lunchtime, and I found that their particular division was going to be moving in 2 years. So she would have this corner office for 2 years.
Wow. Okay.
After 2 years, she may or may not have an office
wow.
with a lot of light.
Okay.
And so how I approached that, I said, you know, how long have you been here? And this is in private caucus. And he told me, I said, you know, it was so good for you to offer her that corner office. I said, so she can get a lot of sunlight. I said, how long can she look forward to all of that sunlight?
Very strategic.
And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, how long, again, I repeated the question. I said, seems to me that I read somewhere that your division was moving. He said, who told you that? I said, the internet. So I said, maybe you will rethink your offer to include the corner office for the longevity of this particular contract with this building, and when you move, to have first dibs on a corner office or an office that has the most light. And so having been found out, he was amenable to settlement.
Wow. Now that was very strategic.
I don't know where I
Yeah.
got that from. I pulled it out of my hat, but I was glad.
But also specificity, I find, is always key when you have agreements too. So that was a good move on your part. Have you ever had to just stop a mediation before?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
And so tell us why.
If people are not engaged in the process, for instance, if there's always a ground rule about telephones, and there's always a ground rule about being, not talking over someone, or basic ground rules. So if I have somebody that is not engaged in the process, if they are always texting while somebody's talking, texting while I'm talking, I actually had a man. It's like we're in this room here and there's some curtains. He stepped away from the mediation table and stood behind the curtains and talked on the phone,
my goodness.
as if he had a cloak of invisibility and no one could hear him as well. So we took a big break, and so we continued a little while after. Now, the only other time that I've had to stop a mediation is when I had a gentleman who served as a representative, and he was an attorney, and he was disrespectful to me. And I won't go into how he was disrespectful,
Right.
but he was disrespectful to me. And I wasn't having it. My agency didn't send me to this mediation to be disrespected. I duly noted the reason that I was going to stop the mediation, and I let the agency deal with him and his client.
Wow. And you've given us a great definition about mediation, what to expect during mediation, and it sounds like you're a really seasoned mediator. With that thought in mind, kind of tell us how you became engaged in the whole mediation process.
Well, you know what I always say when people say you're seasoned, yeah, I'm been doing it a lot of years. And mediation, I've been with FMCS for 30 years.
Okay.
But I got a taste for mediation actually when I was in college,
Okay.
for a reason that had nothing to do with peacemaking. At University of Maryland, College Park, as my son says, back in the olden days, I had roommates, and my roommates sometimes didn't want to go to sleep, sometimes had other people sleep over, would take things and use them, and so I was sick and tired of having roommates that were disrespectful of the space, or sometimes they'd have boyfriends that moved in, and I was like, I gotta have a single room. So the way to get a single room was to become a resident assistant.
Yes.
And I said, well, if this is what I have to do to get a single room, and back then they were also letting you have a telephone that made long distance calls. So I said, if I can get those two things, I want to be an RA. So in that process of training to be a resident assistant was an introduction to mediation.
Wow.
So when people had roommate situations like I've experienced, one of the resolutions that I could make as an RA would be to move people to different rooms.
Okay.
And so it really was an introduction to the peacemaking process to me. Following that, I was trained at DC Superior Court as a family mediator.
Okay.
And that mediation training was wonderful, wonderful. And so for a time I did family mediation at DC Superior Court. I don't do it as much as I would like to.
Gotcha.
That's something I'm going to do when I get more time.
Right.
In my community, I was also trained in Prince George's County with the Prince George's County Human Relations Commission to be a community mediator, and it was a program, and the name of it escapes me. But that was wonderful. It was called, it'll come back to me at an inappropriate time.
Yes.
But not study circles, but that gave me a taste of community mediation. So what I will tell people is that get training from wherever you think that you can get the experience, and that just widens your net that you can cast out to do those types of mediations.
And I believe that you've really honed in on some key examples of how to be a very effective mediator with the proper training to complement that. So in your experience, given that thought, do you find that mediation also heals relationships as well as resolve complaints? Or
I would say the answer to that is in time.
okay,
And sometimes.
okay,
If there has been something that has been committed against someone, and I say of an interpersonal nature,
Right.
where someone's feelings were hurt, someone's values were compromised, and even if someone offers at the table a sincere apology,
yes,
I've heard across the table, you know, I know that I will forgive you in time, but not now.
wow,
So what people have to do following that is go back to work with a new norm or a new normal.
Right.
So it's not going to look the same as it did before.
Gotcha.
But in time, I think that time does heal most wounds.
okay. Is there anything else that you would like to discuss that perhaps we haven't yet addressed?
I would say consider mediation,
Okay.
give it a try. If you feel very strongly about making peace, whether it is in your community, in your workplace, whatever setting, learn as much as you can, get some mediation training. One of the things I want to do, and I'm thinking about doing it once I retire, is learning more about international mediations.
Wow.
Now,
Okay.
we in our department do international cases.
Oh, great.
But I'd like to do some more of those. And so I can see mediation being in my future for a long time.
Okay.
But for those who are interested, you have to be patient.
Gotcha.
You have to try to learn to listen. You have to actually learn how to speak a different way. And I don't speak any louder than I'm speaking right now in mediations. But that's because I have a filter and I don't say the things I really want to say.
Right.
I try to model the behavior that I want other people to utilize. So if you have patience, if you want to make a difference in your workplace, if you want to make a difference in this world, I would say give mediation a try.
Wow, I like that. I
Thank
certainly
you.
agree with that. And we want to thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you found this interview an informative tool to guide you with any issues that you may be experiencing within your respective divisions. Thank you for doing your part in making the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development a model workplace. Please feel free to contact us directly at 202-708-5921 or email us at eeo@hud.gov. Have a great and productive day, everyone.